Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, it's my own listicle. It's Tom. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, friends.
As you can see, Tom is driving. He's in the car. This is literally what we've been reduced to. So there's going to be road noise the whole time. I apologize, but this is how it is. Also joining... Yes, he's in the middle of Wisconsin somewhere. Probably by the Dells, I assume.
Yeah, that was like 3 hours ago.
Gotcha.
2 hours ago.
Also joining us, it's Paul from Radio Free Hammer Hall. What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
I just want to claim victory because right now, as of this moment, I officially have the most appearances as a guest on Warhammer Weekly.
There you go.
Finally,
It's funny to me that it took you this long to eclipse Mitch, who hasn't been on the show for a year and a half or something. You know, like it's insane.
Well, you don't do your victory lap at the beginning. You do it at the end. Come on, man, some class.
What that tells me is that we had no, that's not true. The 5 Timers Clubs joke were always like right at the beginning. And we do need to make some specialized 5 Timers Club t-shirts for those people. Who else is near you besides Mitch? Tyler, I assume.
I think so. I couldn't see any other people that were really like that frequent that I noticed that they were very frequent.
Yeah, you'd have to look for Tyler under either Tyler or Scrubby and Wells.
Sure.
Like, depending on the day, we might have put him under different names.
That's true.
Yeah, or you can just sort the videos by length, and all of the longest ones are.
Sure, that's the easy way to find all of Tyler's videos. Yeah, absolutely.
Touche.
All right.
I mean that in no way as a negative thing. He has lots of brilliant input.
No, I've already started scheduling out. So let's talk about a quick scheduling note here for upcoming weeks. I want to get this out of the way before the news. So next week will not be the Slaanesh show, as I mentioned. Slaanesh comes out this weekend, I should say. And next week will not be the Slaanesh show because I'm in the UK. I'm teaching Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then my wife is over there with me. And if I then do a 6-hour show on Wednesday, I'll get murdered. So we're not doing that. So we're going to do a nice, tight, short show on Wednesday. We'll do something fun. And then come the week after that, the Wednesday after that, which is like the 15th or whatever, I think. We'll do, I'm booking in everybody. We're doing a massive show. You know, my goal is to hit basically 6 hours. Got to get to 6 because that's the important part for the number of Slaanesh. So we're going to start with some UK guests and then drift over into America once it becomes too late. Okay. So we'll make it worth it. You got to wait a little longer, but that's okay. I promise we will give the most deep rundown of Slaanesh. We'll go all in. There will be nothing held back. It'll be a very thorough, complete review of the book. So
did you say there's going to be excess?
Absolutely. It will be an excessive review that will go very deep, super deep, the deepest.
So how deep?
All the way. Jim Capaldi all the way. So now that's scheduling note. So next week we'll be on UK time, by the way. So it'll probably be Eastern time. It'll be an earlier show. So that's just programming notes for weeks to come. So the next couple shows will start early.
I'm just gonna be concerned for everyone's well-being because I heard you're supposed to consult a doctor if it lasts longer than 4 hours.
Well, that would be okay. We haven't had a show break that yet, but that will change very soon. Because you know, Slaanesh demands. All right, so that's where we're at right now with that. So that's programming note out of the way. Go ahead, Tom.
Look like they're walking on a sea of Viagra pills, of little blue pills.
We didn't hear anything you said except for something about a Viagra joke. That was it. That was literally the end of all that came through.
You didn't hear anything?
Nope.
Really?
Nope.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh my gosh. No, just simply that your Slaanesh army is walking on a sea of Viagra pills.
Oh, sure. As a basing element, you mean?
As a basing, that is your basing element.
I don't think Slaanesh needs that.
No, well, I mean, look.
It's a little blue pill.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and yes, eventually there will be a slideshow of my whole of like the updated Slaanesh army, but it's not going to happen until after I paint all the new stuff, which I will be very delayed on starting, but such is life. Because obviously I will be in the UK this starting, like I leave it on Friday to go over to the UK. As I mentioned, I'm teaching Saturday, Sunday. We're doing the unit class Saturday and Sunday at Dark Sphere Games in London. There's still time. If you want to join us, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a full class. The link's down in the description. Saturday, Sunday. So 16 hours of class about painting units. And then Monday is a bank holiday in the UK. And so, these are afternoon classes. They start at like 3 p.m. So if you can get like a couple hours off work on Tuesday, you're good. And we're going to do large figure on Tuesday. So, and there's a deal if you sign up for both classes. How about that? So you can come join me for that. There's still time to sign up. Links down there. Would love to have you. We have a very good turnout for the weekend, but this is like a really big space, so we can actually host more than normal. So that's awesome. All right. So just that's a note about that. So I'll be over there, and then I'm over there for the whole week. And then obviously Warhammer Fest is the weekend after that. So I look forward very much to losing in that competition. That will be a lot of fun. So let's get to some news, and we're not going to rely on Tom to do the news tonight. Don't worry. I'm not going to try to make Tom in the car do the news. You're kind of quiet, by the way, Tom. So I don't know if you want to make something be louder. I don't know.
Am I still quiet?
It picks up after a minute. You have to talk for a minute before your mic, because you're using like some kind of thing that's your noise canceling is, making it so it has to pick you up after you talk for a second.
Okay.
Yeah. At any rate, it's fine because it keeps the road noise to a minimum. You just have to understand that when you start talking, it's going to be a second before we hear you.
Got it.
All right. Rumor engine. Let's do this. Here we go. Boom. Boom. Locking it on. Sharing it up. Here we go. Chaos. Holding a hammer thing. Next.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's just Chaos holding a hammer thing. Chaos hands have the broken, Chaos hands have the same finger joints, and they end in pointy fingers. I would like to credit Martin Orlando for saying Stormcast have roundy fingers and Chaos has pointy fingers. Know your enemy. There you go. So,
yeah. And I would guess, just to throw this out there, that it's not going to be Dark Oath. Just because I don't feel like they would have that much armor on.
No, I'll bet it's the new chosen models. That's my call.
I think it's just a Warcry model. We know we're getting a ton of new Chaos stuff in Warcry, so this is probably just one of the Warcry models.
My guess is honestly 40K.
It could be, I suppose, but I mean, we already had a pretty big Chaos-y 40K release. That's not saying there couldn't be more, but we're right on the border of a ton of Chaos models coming out in Warcry. Some of them will be armored. Some of them will be more shirtless Marauder dudes. Seems even money that it's just a Warcry dude, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm calling Chosen still.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be cool. New Chosen would be great. They should do that. I agree. Could be, sure. Although I would point out this is some kind of one-handed weapon, but this could be like a champion or something. Like Chosen have traditionally had big two-handed weapons. So
yeah, the champion's holding it in one hand though. Right.
That's what I was saying. Could be the unit champion who's just he's kind of, chilling to the side with the thing or whatever, right? Yeah. Tom is in the car because he's driving to Minnesota, basically. So there you go. He's somewhere in Wisconsin right now. That's somebody asked why you were in the car, Tom.
I'm heading to a professional conference. That's why.
There you go. All right. Oh, and yes, as somebody mentioned, that the hand is very similar to the Varangard. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. Continuing news stuff. Well, we talked about the terrain reveal from the Bill of Lading, not soup related, from last week. And sure enough, this week, bang, right on time, all the pictures of the terrain arrived. And most notably in the article spoiler, I don't know, did you notice the header over the top?
No.
The terrain of forbidden power or whatever. It said it basically called out forbidden power. So kudos to you, Tom, because you had said you thought the terrain would actually be forbidden power related. So there you go. And Tom is he'll cut in and out because I'm guessing his cell phone coverage is spotty.
Yeah, I mean it is Wisconsin.
Also, as stated, your cell phone is basically from 1942. Captain America in World War II had a newer cell phone than you. Yes.
Probably true.
Yeah. But the so you know that terrain's cool. Looks really good. Paul, what'd you think of the terrain? Did you see the pictures of it?
I did not see the pictures of it, actually. I feel like sometimes, like news-wise, I feel like I just kind of like live in a hole until Warhammer Weekly happens. So I'm learning about it from everybody else.
No, that's fine. Would you?
That means we're doing our
There you go. Would you like to see the picture of it, Paul?
I would love to.
Okay, great. Well,
I'm
let's.
sure many of our viewers would also love to see it.
Sure, absolutely.
You know what it is? It's basing terrain for Vince. That's what that is.
Well, there's a couple different elements to it. It's really pretty great. Like, there's quite a lot going on. So, I mean, like, we have a lot of images of this new terrain. So let's dig into it. I'll kind of cycle through all of them here. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and share up, and then we will take a look together. Let's all look together at the new terrain because there's a lot of it, which is good news. All right. So let's start here. Oh, that's a very small picture, but this is what we've got. Temples of the Shadow Realm. Okay. So here we go. That's what that is. It's a nice big flat temple. You can put a lot of models on top of it. And you're going to see that repeated, that these are very much terrain like meant to be used with figures. So.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of the temple that I built for my daughter's.
Yeah, Tom built a similar piece for his daughter's Arcane display board. All right. Here's one. This is kind of like, again, I apologize. The pictures are small. This is what it is, folks. But yeah, here, some like you can see the steppy temples. Different thing here.
Hey, Vince, you got a lock on you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't lock on me this time. Thank you very much. No, I'm locked on me. I did. It's just sometimes you won't see it. But yes, I'm locked on me.
Okay.
Okay. There's that piece right there. There's the Forbidden Power mentioned. Warhammer Age of Sigmar Forbidden Power. Talks about the new terrain as part of that. Here you can see, we'll zoom in on a couple of these pieces, but you can see the temple-y piece in the middle. You can see these like scatter pieces here. You can see the this big flat dais thing, which we've got another picture of. So there's the zoom in on the scatter terrain, or as I call it, the additional basing elements. Very nice of them to do that for us. Okay. And then here's the big dais-y thing. So that's kind of cool. And then lastly, this one, which shows like these little two dog pieces in the middle and just, you know, some little stuff like this, some little stand-up pieces. There you go.
Nice. It's a nice little smattering of new terrain that's very functional.
I wonder if so. It sounds like you'll have the opportunity to buy each of those as like army terrain for this new Forbidden Power. Like if this is really like if it is what they described, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a question. Like it's obviously going to have rules, the big pieces, right? Like the temple and the dais and stuff. Those are all going to do things, right? They're not just like literally terrain you can throw on the board. But I don't know what they'll do. So there you go. I mean, yes, I understand the pictures are small, everyone. I apologize. It's the best quality I could find. So that's what it is. Nope. Tom's gone. But yeah, I'm excited for the scatter train. Like, I think that's cool. I like that they actually are meant to be usable. Like they've got the nice large flat spaces on top where you can move models up and over them. That's cool. Yeah. Honestly, they're very much like the old school hills, right? Like your old school like styrofoam hills where it would be like a thing like this on the side and then a big flat space on top and then a thing down. Like they have that same basic shape, right?
Yeah, it's nice to see things that are going to be usable as like pieces of terrain that are cover, as opposed to pieces of terrain that are like functionally impassable. Maybe you can land a flying unit on top of it.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm willing to bet that temple, the one that they saw, I'd have to go back and look at it, but the first one we saw that was like the Shadow Realm. Okay. I'm willing to bet that if you sat down the pie plate base on it, it would sit on top of the pillars. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So like it's still that massive thing still won't fit in the middle. I mean, you can still land on top of it, but it'll just be funny because you still won't be able to actually fit down in the middle on the temple itself, like in the flat space, because that base is so massive. Like Archeon's base is what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. All right.
Definitely not the Chaos War Mammoth.
No, definitely not the War Mammoth or the Dread Saurian or the Horny Dragon. Yeah. The three uses of the imaginary base that is too big to be actually usable. Yes. Please put the Corn Dragon, please put the Dread Saurian and the Mammoth back onto like a sane base. Thank you. Okay, the Corn Dragon can stay.
Or at least reduce the base.
Sure. But hey, given lots of 3D printers a chance to make a little scratch, that's fine. It's community building right there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the new terrain. Got a lot of that coming. It'll clearly be out. Like that's from the next White Dwarf. So obvi not super far away, right?
On sale this Friday.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not going to be waiting long for that terrain.
No, but we do have Loon Curse coming to reserve soon.
Yes. So that's the next news item. Loon Curse. The box set that we had said, like really all we got was that little preview of the spooky trees and then bouncy goblins. And, so I went back and actually, so like talking about checking predictions, I went back and checked what Tom and I had predicted after the Adepticon reveal show about Loon Curse.
We are fact-checking ourselves.
Yes, because I wanted to know how accurate was our prediction, right? Because we said, well, it's obviously a new box set. It's Sylvaneth versus, Gits and stuff. And we actually made guesses as to what it contains. And I will say I was pretty proud of us. We were pretty close. We were like 16 dryads off. Like I guessed the Sylvaneth side, but with 16 extra dryads, and you guessed the Goblin side pretty dead on, including the fact that the hero would be a new hero on like Giant Squig or Giant Cave Squig or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go us. Yay. So, Tom, what did you think about the Loon Curse box? Do you have any interest in either of those armies at all?
I mean, I have like 4 boxes on order.
What percentage of those are ending up back on eBay?
I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I wanted a Goblin army. Like, I wanted a Squig army, and that gives me basically everything I need.
Well, I think there was 2 elements to this, right? Like, you wanted a Squig army, and your daughter decided to turn away from the bright light of Slaanesh and has foolishly gone to the trees. So I believe that's what that happened there.
She wants, like, Wanderer/Sylvaneth. Like, she wants all the tree forest stuff, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And so, like, some of it will end up with her, and then it'll just depend on the new book as to what I keep and what I sell, probably.
Sure.
So we'll see.
Yes, I agree, Dan. I completely agree. All right. Nothing. Don't worry about it, Tom. Don't worry about it, Mr. Can't See the Comments. It doesn't matter.
Well, what matters here is the fact that I have not any new armies yet.
Uh-huh. No, sure. Sure.
I don't own any new armies.
Uh-huh.
I started with a Loon Curse army, or a Gloomspite army, and I still have a Gloomspite army. I started the year with a Fireslayer army, and I have a Fireslayer army.
No, sure. Absolutely, Tom. That's exactly what you meant. No doubt. That's exactly correct. As long as, well, in that case, I haven't bought a new army basically ever. Because I bought one fig from the army, and then everything else just wasn't a new army. That was just me adding more figs. I had one hero. It was fine.
Right. Like the whole goal, if you go back to the show, was that I said I didn't want to start a new army. I may expand or develop some of my current And that's the plan. You know, I'm on track.
You're full of it, is what you are.
And-
Paul,
and-
what do you think about Loon Curse?
So I have mixed feelings about it because I always like to see new good entry points for players to get in, boxes with good value in them, which, you know, of course definitely does. My beef is that half of it's Sylvaneth. Personally, I hate playing against Sylvaneth.
Mhm.
And it's not because I lose to Sylvaneth frequently. It's because the games that I play against Sylvaneth are just unfun because of the mechanics.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But we don't know that. We don't know what's going to change though. Like a new book's going to drop, and we don't know what changes there.
right. And until a new book comes, this can die in a tire fire because it contains Sylvaneth models, which will get more people into that army. If there's a new book, then this is wonderful. If that book completely changes several mechanics.
Sure. All I want to see
So
it do is fire the Sylvaneth Wildwood into the sun. That's as I've said before.
Yes.
If we can just stop that entire mechanic, make a new terrain piece, and burn all existing Sylvaneth Wildwoods from existence, then I'm going to call it a win.
You mean like lay down line of sight blocking mountains, whatever they want?
No, just like have something different. Give them a big tree and let them teleport around the board. Like, I don't care. They can just teleport around the board. Like, here's a trade I would make. Sylvaneth, you can all just free freaking teleport now. Who cares? Seraphon do it already. Plenty of people do it already. You come up through the grass and bushes and shrubs or on any existing terrain. They nominate existing terrain to become overgrown and they can teleport onto that one. Cool. But what they set up is like the Oak of the Ages. They grow some massive tree. Their terrain piece is just a big tree. One big tree. Singular tree. There you go. It's the special tree, and it lets them redirect and regrow and cover over all the existing terrain on the board. And then that becomes teleporting beacons for them. Hey, easy. Look, solve the whole problem. Now we don't have to have all the stupid fights about trying to squidge models in between these dumb trees. And are the holes real? Can I stand in the trees? How many extra inches do I have to walk, climb up and over the tree? Blah, 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 blah.
Vince, can you show me on the Maw Crusher where the tree touched you?
Yeah, you're darn right. You're darn right, man.
I'm glad I'm not the only one with these feelings about the way Sylvaneth currently plays. I'd also like to see their summoning mechanic change. They're like the only army, I think, that still summons off of spells, and that seems like a problem.
Why? Like, what specifically?
I mean, it just seems like they can produce a lot more stuff through summoning than a lot of our other armies can.
But is that still going to be true in a world like with all the other magic armies out there and Enrapturous is making them reroll casts and Khorne armies just shutting down magic completely and on and on and on?
Well,
I don't know. It seems it's just not in line with how all of the other army mechanics work.
Sure.
And it just feels like that's one of those things that feels like it should be the same across the board.
Okay. Fine. I mean, like, I don't care. I would love, that's fine. Like, it could be changed. I wouldn't have any issue with it. Like the natural thing for it to be would probably end up being kind of a mirror of Nurgle's, right? Where like,
yeah,
where Nurgle is summoning based on spreading their sort of vile evil growth. You know, Sylvaneth is growing by spreading like life, you know, that kind of thing. So sure, they could just be a weird mirror of Nurgle and that'd be fine. But whatever.
It's just quantity over quality.
Yeah, I mean, their summoning is interesting in that you're right, it is very spell driven, and or Alariel, right, who just shows up and goes like Tree Lord or, you know, Kurnoth or whatever, you know. So sure. If they're not summoning Wildwoods anymore, then good. Anything is better.
Did you all see the changes to or some of the rules that got leaked out with it?
That Kurnoth got split into multiple, you know, groups. They're now like they're what should have been done years ago. Like, this has been discussed for a couple years, right? The idea that like Kurnoth with scythes are a different unit than Kurnoth with bows. Look, if we're splitting Hellstriders into 2 units, Kurnoth are different units. Like, that's immediately get out of here. Okay, if claw spears and whips are different and nobody's got that neg 1 to hit banner, it's just literally the spear and the whip, then these guys are definitely different. Just saying.
Yeah. And really, I feel like the bows are so radically different in power level compared to the scythes and the swords. Or at least if they adjust things, they could be very different. They have very different utility in the game. Like, it makes sense for them to be at different point values.
100%. Yeah, for the shooting unit to not be the same point as like your melee smash unit, or sorry, not tied to the same points. They might end up the same points. Like, that could be the case, right? It's just they shouldn't be necessarily the same points.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I agree, Gary. I mean, they're still good. It's just like if you need a 3rd battle line unit. So there you go. All right. So yeah, Loon Curse and new Sylvaneth, and that new Sylvaneth character who looked pretty cool, who was also like 2 rumor engines, because he was the bug on his back that is the big set of wings, was like both the pinchy tail and the like segmented sections.
Yep.
How about that? So there you go. More rumor engines resolved because of that dude. I thought he looked pretty cool. And it's, hey, great, something in Sylvaneth flies. That's a pretty rare thing in their army, so that's cool.
Doesn't Alario fly on the beetles?
I said, yeah. I mean, like, I would call the 600 point special character being your like basically only flying unit a rarefied thing. I'm just saying. She doesn't make her way into every list, you know. She's not like a Dryad or something. Yeah. It's a long way from the Night Haunt army where it's just like, we fly. That's just what we do. We are spooky ghosts. All right. Warhammer Underworlds Online. That got announced, launched, teasered, whatever you want to say. So that happened. If you're a fan of Underworlds, previously known as Shadespire, this season known as Night Vault, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be an online version of it. So that's a thing.
I feel like I'm more likely to play the online version of that than the tabletop version of that.
I don't know.
I feel like a lot depends on what the payment, you know, sort of like world looks like here, right? If they're smart and kind of set it up like Arena or something like that, you know, then sure, maybe. It's going to really depend on what exactly you're paying and how much and how often, right?
Yeah.
No.
I can think of few things that are more dependent on cost structure than the success of this online adventure.
Yes.
Because, like, you know, Underworld itself, I've gotten many of the warbands. I think Tom has almost all of them. I never play the game. I got the warbands because I like painting the warbands. I think they're fun. I use some of them in my army sometimes, but like, I use them in AoS more than I use them for Underworld. Right?
Like when I go on vacation, like it's something that I'll take with the kids or with some of my friends to play. It's easy to pack, but it's not it's not a staple around our house for games.
Right. Yeah. So and you know, as was a good point, there's a question of like, will it cannibalize its own market? I don't know, maybe. I mean, if they're getting more money out of it, that's not cannibalization, right? Like, that is to say, if you're able to turn a higher profit on, let's imagine that your total pool of money goes down, like you keep 100% of your players or grow slightly, but your total pool of money even shrinks, but your margin is higher, it was still the right move, right? So it's just like, who knows? Who even knows? There's so many things there. Tom, as I've said, it like for people joining late, Tom is driving to somewhere in Minnesota, so that's why he's on the road. But here we are. All right, keep moving. News. Here's some news. Slaanesh launched this weekend. That's what I'm talking about. We mentioned it already. They played today. I watched some of the Twitch stream, and it was great. That was a worthwhile lunch break right there. I'm excited. I'm working hard to get Tom interested in Slaanesh. Paul, what do you think of Slaanesh so far?
It's one of those armies that I think is going to have, again, mechanics that are not fun to play against. I'm glad to see that the Hellstriders got like busted out, and only one version of them has that -1 to hit.
But neither of them.
Neither of them do.
They lost their -1.
Yeah. Yeah, not having that particular mechanic in that army that's good.
Yep.
I think it's not an army that I would personally pick up, but I'm always happy to see new models and new army books coming out that people are interested in. Just keep the meta fresh, keep things interesting. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen because Slaanesh has already been doing well in tournaments despite not having a book until now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Vince has worked really, really hard to get me interested. He almost suckered me into doing it for a Holy Havoc team. But I'm gonna stick firm with my Night Haunt commitment. As I said, sorry Vince, nice try. I think from what we're seeing, Slaanesh is going to be strong in the meta.
Don't worry, folks. I'll bring him back around to having we'll get him on board for a Slaanesh Holy Havoc team. Like, it's just the way to go. If you can't, I'll put it to rest for now. But let me tell you where Tom comes back in. Here you go. Everybody ready? Here's why Tom is going to be playing Slaanesh with me at Holy Havoc 2019. Okay? Tom is not going to be playing Slaanesh Demons because he just doesn't have it in him. Okay? He doesn't have it in him to handle the beauty, the power, the perfection that is the Slaanesh Demon. But Tom has always loved, deep in the well of his cold, cold heart, he's always loved crap like Chaos Warriors and that kind of stuff, Chaos Knights and these kinds of things. And so when the Ever-Chosen, Slaves to Darkness, Dark Oath, whatever combined, book comes out, or as I think of it, Slaanesh 2 Electric Boogaloo, this time it's for real. It's time to go deep. Okay? That's just basically Slaanesh Release Part 2, because obviously that'll have all the Godmark stuff in it, right? And there will be things in there that Tom looks at and likes. I guarantee it, because he's been champing at the bit to play Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights and crap like that. And we'll get him onto a Slaanesh thing, and we'll be good to go. So don't worry, it'll happen.
You're not wrong that I have been desiring to paint those minis that I already own. But what I will say is, what would turn me off is if the Night Haunt and what I want to play in Night Haunt is not well costed. If for some reason the points go up in the new GHB, that's what will turn me off.
Yeah, there's no way you're doing that, Ghost Army. It's boring. It's just boring. So it's cool. We'll get you back on to sweet, sweet Warriors, Chaos Warriors. You want 60 wounds. You want to block a 60 wounds running and charging and double hitting and trip hitting on 6s. Because that's what you want. Get into it.
I mean, I do. I want to block a 20 Chaos Knights trip hitting with all on their lances.
Sure. I can't wait. As to myself, I mean, how do I feel about Slaanesh? I think that the button sums it up. Just read the button. If you want to know, just look at the button. That should tell you how I feel.
Where did you get that button from?
A viewer was very nice and sent me this button, which I have worn basically every day since it was sent to me. So there you go. That's how I feel about that.
Nice. See, I think Tom will not get into Slaanesh unless it is not a very popular release. So I feel like Tom's MO on armies is he likes to play things that are good, but are good under the radar.
No, Tom's a list hipster, but we'll talk about that. That's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about types of list building and stuff like that in the show tonight.
I mean, you're not wrong. The Daughters of Cain were a one-off for me. They were a weird exception.
Sure. Well, we both got into that. Not on the Daughters of Cain tip, which both Tom and I played. We both made that choice and had basically bought into that army long before the book came out. They revealed that like rock and roll trailer at LVO, and Tom and I literally put on our order the next day. We were like, "Yep, all that." So we knew nothing about the rules. Like that was complete luck, you know. Here, somebody has to see the button more close up. I am excited about Slanesh. There you go. Okay.
I should say in parentheses afterwards, sexually. That's Slanesh, right?
Sure. I'm like apparently a button or whatever, right, is called a badge. This is I don't know that I would call this a badge, but at any rate, it could be, I guess. It's a UK thing. Gary is saying, wait, you call badges buttons. What do you do your shirts up with then? Also buttons. But that's fine. Okay. So, yeah, Slanesh, get into it. We'll talk about it in 2 weeks and more next week. Let's be honest. Of course, we're going to talk about it some.
Let's get it to you. You know, whatever you're down for.
Sure. Quick note: there will be a small preview this weekend, so stay tuned to the internet this weekend. I don't know when it is. It's like it'll probably come in our Friday, I guess, because it's actually on Saturday in Australia, which is like actually Friday in the US or something like that. I don't know how time zones work. But at the opening of the Mount Gravet or store or something, the championship store, they're doing a championship and they're actually having like a little preview show and some seminars and stuff there. So they said they're going to preview some stuff. I wouldn't expect anything too massive, given that the week after that is Warhammer Fest, and then 2 weeks after that is the UK Games Expo. So the fact they're doing like 3 preview seminars this month. But I hope maybe we could get like maybe a deeper look at Forbidden Power or Warcry or something, right? Because they could break that up a lot.
Right. I'm calling it. We'll see Seraphon at the Game Expo, and we will see Shadespire. We'll see the Warcry at the Game Expo.
At Fest, you mean? You're saying Seraphon at Fest and Warcry at Game Expo, or the other way around?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
When does the KO book get previewed?
After summer.
Oh, wow. Okay. Pushing it that far out. Okay.
Yep.
I hope so, too. Push KO way back. That way you don't try to sneak KO into that team tournament. So there you go. I'll tempt you. We can't have that kind of temptation, folks. I'm sorry. I'm not aligning my Slanesh with Dirty Kharadron Overlords. That's not happening. Although, I don't know, maybe it'd work. It's all money. It's all excess. So maybe there is a story there. I'd have to think on that. Okay. So that's coming this weekend. And that's all our news. Cool. News done. Pick of the week.
Half the show done.
Sure. Paul, what do you got?
Oh, man. So I just want to give a shout out to one that frequently gets shouted out, the Honest Wargamer. One of the few things that I've been in like Warhammer YouTube content that I've been really regularly watching lately. They're doing really, really good coverage of the competitive metagame. And talking about competitive lists and what's doing well and all of those sorts of things. So if you're interested in competitive play and, you know, things that we're going to be talking about later on in the show about list building, and ways to build lists in response to the metagame, that's a really good source to kind of feel things out and see what's going on in the metagame, what's doing well, get some ideas to kind of know what you're up against.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Between the Honest Wargamer, between like the weekly list and sort of stat review show with LLV, and then just the Honest Wargamer list library, it really is your source for all things sort of list. Also, Tom, don't you have like a dash light or an interior light or don't you have a dome light or something you can turn on? It's quite dark in your car now.
Only darkness.
Gotcha. Hey, oh my gosh, there you go. Yeah, much better. All right, so Tom, what's your pick of the week?
It's gonna be a Twitter, like a Twitter account.
Okay, sure, it's fine.
Which is Mothman Draws. A lot of his works are like 40K chaos stuff.
Okay.
And I shared one of his works this week, which was the very ever so cute Selesky, where the Daemonette is like sitting there and the dude is like sleeping in her lap, and it's like the cutest Slanesh couple in the world.
Sure.
Like it is the art piece that almost made me like roll up Slanesh. Like it almost happened.
Well, we got to do it. We got to commission some more works then from this guy. We'll get you in.
Well, and so I looked through, and he has a bunch of other like pretty sweet artwork. And so I would encourage you to go check out his stuff.
Nice. I'll link the Twitter account in the description. Yes, I saw that piece as well, obviously, because it was Slanesh related. So of course, but I'll link it down there. My shout out is to a wonderful blog that was written up today on AoS Shorts. So our buddy Dan runs AoS Shorts. He had Nico come in and of the South London Legion there and write a really excellent piece on the activation war and the nature of activation. Now, I don't agree, Nico, with some of the points you were drawing in the middle of your article, where you go off into like these things being defined. I like Nico's legal mind fired off there in a very like way I could track how his brain was working. But I didn't. But then it doesn't matter because the point he's making is that I didn't agree with the conclusion he was reaching, but then it didn't matter because they gave an answer that invalidated that conclusion anyways and made it clear that it worked a different way. So, which is how I would have argued it worked anyways. And so he goes through like the nature of start, during, and end phase, nuances to the performance of this. But as we have said, begun the activation wars have, and boy is it true. Like with the coming of Slanesh, it's about to get really real because all of the heroes are firing off, like making you go last effectively, right? And or sapping your go at the start and stuff like that. So there's quite a lot of this already, and there's about to be a big influx of it. And the fact that like all of the keepers will make you go last in combat on a 2-up, it's pretty good.
Yep.
So, there you go. Never mind the mirror twins who get 2 bites at the apple. So that's nice. They can like take you from start to last. So there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, check out I'll link the blog down below. It's a worthwhile read if you're interested in the finer points of how all of that crazy stuff works. Yeah, there we go. Hobby time. Oh, what are you working on, man?
Well, I have been working on Skaven. I've been building on the Skaven army. I had to take a little break from it though, so I decided to stop working on a horde army and go do the bases on 80 free guild swordsmen instead today. So that was fun, but just wanted to pull out a little piece that I had been working on is finally done that I think would make Vince proud. Basically, with my Skaven army, doing a big horde, I think, is really hard to do interesting basing on.
Sure.
So with all of like my clan rats and all that, they're going to be very boring to look at. And my goal is to attract everybody's eye to the centerpiece models and the heroes.
Sure.
So that means take the basing on those to 11. So this right here is my Screaming Bell. Let's get up close here. So you'll see this is about like lifted up like 2 inches off the ground, has a little bridge with green goo.
Yeah, man.
Chain railing, some rats hanging around, and then the bell itself. So this was a lot of cork, a lot of wood filler, also wood. I was going after your heart, Vince.
I know it. You've succeeded. I love it. That's great. Way to build it way up. Like as I dig that. Yes, it's great. Very reminiscent, actually, of like one of the like a little mini slice out of one of the pieces in the Warhammer World museum. They have a big diorama that you can walk around of Skaven invading a dwarven mountain home. It's awesome. It's like them coming into the tunnels, and there's places where they're going across sort of bridges like that. It's pretty cool.
And I've got to say, despite having to slog through tons and tons of clan rats, I have really, really enjoyed hobbying on Skaven. Like their models and their centerpiece models are just awesome and fun to paint. And even the clan rats aren't bad to get through. So it's been a really fun choice that I'm really glad that I made, because they're also like perfectly my playstyle too.
Sure. No, I mean, Skaven are like their character models are really fun. I paint Skaven character models just like as a sort of palette cleanser, I guess. They're my sorbet, if you will, because I have just I mean I have a million of them, right, from just that I collected over time, and so they just kind of sit around, and whenever I just want something fun, I can paint in a day and just kind of kick back with and not worry about. Hence why I have like 4 or 5 Death Masters and 5 engineers and 3 arch warlocks and on and on and on, just because I keep painting them. Probably an equivalent number of claw lords. Like I could legitimately, I think I could do it all the way. I could get close. I think I have 5 claw lords, like old warlords. I don't think I have the full 6. I could almost do all 6, but I need to get one more. Clearly, I'm looking for. I want to get that Games Day special win. That would be that's my dog right there. So we'll see. Tom has gone back into the dark.
I have.
I see. Why did you turn your light off?
Because it's raining out, and so like I want to be able to see out of my windshield.
Seems like a pretty weak excuse to me. Your life is a small price to pay for good lighting. But at any rate, Tom, that's fine. What's your there you go. No, that's fine. You can be bouncing ball. Bouncing ball's fine. Bouncing ball's probably better than darkness. What'd you work on before you began this road trip, Tom?
I am working on my son's Stormcast. The Star Drake is basically done, other than basing. And so I'm going back to like line painting all of the troops, like all of the troops. And so it's coming along. Like it's a nice. I'm not taking it to 11, but it's like it'll definitely like catch some eyes. So yeah, it's been a fun like painting Stormcast is quite cathartic. I'll be honest.
Sure, they're a very simple form, right? That is good to paint. Yeah. Okay, cool. For myself, I have been working on not much because I taught last weekend in Dallas, and that was a lot of fun. Thank you to all my students who came out. It was a great class. And thank you to Evolution Games who hosted us. So that was really awesome. I couldn't tell you. I don't even know. They're in like Fort Worth somewhere, but I know that's a very large area. But Evolution Games in Fort Worth, look it up. It was a very nice store, and they were really great hosts. And then I got back, and I have to travel tomorrow for work and Friday for work, and then Friday I go to the UK. So I haven't been exactly dripping with free time here. Nonetheless, I've been working on this dude, so he's coming along. He's gonna be my Chaos Sorcerer on foot, because you got to have that. So there's this little flamey skulls in back. He's just been kind of a fun little project. I got rid of his gun. You can see there, like he used to have a gun on his belt. I got rid of it and replaced it with little like scrolls. And then I cut off on the back of this thing here, his little like, his backpacks got jets. He had little jets, but I cut off the jets and replaced them with skulls. So more skulls just seems like a perfectly fine fit. So now he's down to just tubes. Yeah. There he is. He's coming along nicely. He's fun.
Nice.
So that guy, I'll finish him up, I'm sure, when I get back. But mostly it was just fixing up Golden Demon stuff and crap like that. So, gentlemen, let's talk about lists.
Yes.
Here we go. All right.
I like lists.
Tom loves lists. Tom, as we all know, is the creator of all lists in Warhammer. If you've thought of a list, Tom already thought of it. That's what we know. All of the lists are like Tom did them first. He is the list. He's not just the hipster. He's the lister. Go ahead, Tom.
I didn't say that, but okay.
What you need to do, if you don't do it already, is start dating all of your Word documents or Excel documents, whatever you're using, to make your lists that you're constantly brewing. Just like date stamp them, so you can be like, "Here, no, really, I thought of this first."
I have nothing to prove.
He print it out and mail it to himself. We go for the poor man's copyright, right? So I want to talk about the nature of list building first. I thought that the way to think about this, the way to start on this that might be interesting, is the following two questions. Do you build different lists for different intentions? Like, how do you decide what you're trying to build a list for? And what are some of the sort of like baseline criteria? 40,000 foot view. What are you looking for in a list? What do you go toward? What do you stay away from? So, different types of lists you build, and then what are you looking for in that? So, Paul, kick us off. Start.
Well, I think my starting point for lists and picking armies in general is just to know what my play style is and to try and play into that as much as possible. So I feel like even if you're playing with a substandard list, you will always play better if you're playing with a list you're comfortable with in your play style. So if you're able to identify that and can figure out how to build lists towards that concept, that is going to give you a huge advantage. So, like myself, I really like a lot of flexibility. I like to be able to kind of change things midstream, and that's really reflected in the armies that I own, the armies that I play a lot. I like having options constantly all the time and having as much control over those options as possible. That's why I play Nurgle, and I'll take a Great Unclean one with a Bell and Bile Blade and still put Tome of 1,000 Poxes on him so that I can move the wheel on a 5. Mm-hmm. So that I always get that buff that I need at the exact time I need it.
So flexibility is a key part of your list. Is that what you look for in your units as well? Like, I mean, you mentioned the Guo, but like, are you looking across the board, just trying to use sort of pieces that have multi facets? Is that your thought often?
Yeah, very frequently. You know, again, with the Nurgle example, Lightnings are very good offensively and very good defensively. The only thing they're not really super good at is being a lot of bodies in one location, but they're offensive enough to reduce your opponent's number of bodies to compensate for that. Mm-hmm. So they're a very solid all-around unit. So it's easy to take a list of like 25 or 30 Blight Kings in it and still have a really flexible army because that one unit can do a lot of different things.
All right. No, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. What I love is that watching the comments, I'm watching how many people are giving their own interpretation of like what they look for in a list. And it's so funny to see like just completely different things in there. And it's what's fascinating to me about this topic. Tom, what about yourself? What are the types of lists you build? What are your rules you look for? What are the key components?
Almost every list that I start with starts with an insight as something that shouldn't work or works weirdly or that is an abnormal interaction of abilities or battalions or whatever. So like almost every list I start with evolves around an insight that I have into how a unit functions or how it would function on the tabletop. Mm-hmm. So
the classic Johnny archetype, right?
Yeah. It's like, so all of my lists basically start with the observation on a single ability, almost every single time. And it's like, okay, well, if I have this thing and I want to do this thing, what else can I do to build around this thing to either supplement it or make it stronger? Like, to do so like a great example of this is, let's talk about hex rates real quick. Hex rates are a mediocre unit. They're an older unit that hasn't really seen a lot of play in Nighthaunt. And then I had a really fascinating observation that, like, I was thinking about other Cav, and then I got to thinking about Nighthaunt and Hex Ray specifically with this observation. And that main observation is this. They have 2 profile attacks. They have horse attacks and rider attacks, right?
Sure.
So that means that every time they receive a bonus to attack, like +1 attacks, they get 2 attacks for every 1 bonus.
This is true. Yes, assuming it's a thing that will affect the mount, which in the case of a unit, most things would. Yes.
Yeah, and so it went like, oh, wait a minute. There's this unit that adds bonus to attacks. Huh. Oh, wait, here's another unit that does that same thing. That would stack. Huh. And so suddenly, like, I have a 10er doing, like, 80 attacks around and having a chance to, like, attack before the combat even starts. And it's like, oh, there might be a list here. And so, for me, it always starts with some interaction that was probably unanticipated when I first encountered, or with how everybody else is reading or playing those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I dig it. So
you're starting with what's broken or bent in an army and building out from there.
I'm starting with things that are not anticipated.
Yeah, I don't think it's always broken or bent. I don't think that's what, like, sometimes, yes, I think that is what Tom starts with. Sure. Like, sometimes he'll find a hinky interaction, and that's the interaction he's talking about, right? But I think just as much it can be a surprising thing, or something that isn't as, like, that plays well in the meta, right? Or that it's an unusual role for a unit to take, or whatever. So, like, not all of it's necessarily bent, like it's too efficient for its points, or it's, you know, whatever. It's relying on some kind of rules loophole, although he's been there before too, right?
Like, let me give another example of this. And this is one I talked about with the Fire Slayer show we did last week. It's the fact that in Vostard, you can send 2 Magmadroth Rune Suns across the table 18 inches at the top of one with a charge. And highly buff them up. And so in Vostard, just those 2, like, re-rolling all hits and wounds, and suddenly it's like, oh, there's a really interesting alpha here that like alone wouldn't have done it, but it's because of how those things all interact together. That's not broken, but it's just it's the culmination of a bunch of abilities all coming together to do something special.
Culmination. All right, yeah, no, I get it. So you want to know how I build lists? Here you go. Here's my tactics.
You like big stompy things.
That's right. I start with the models that I absolutely love and want to stick in the list. Period. I start there. Okay. And then that usually forms me some foundation of the list. And then from there, I just think, okay, what else does this army need? Right. And what I find fascinating is that there's lots of little steps you can go through. Like, I think when you talk about the starting point, there's so many divergent starting points. So, like, just offhand in the comments that have been mentioned thus far, right? Some people talked about, like, the story, right? That they start with, like, a story for an army and they go. Some people start with, like, 2,000 points of the models they can afford and or like, right? And then that's their list. So they kind of plot out the list of the models they like or that they own or that they can afford or whatever, and that's their list. Some people, you know, shout out to Gary P, who said, read through the book, find all the deployment and move shenanigans and broken rules, build around that while keeping a diversity of threats. So there you go. Yeah. I would call that the spike response. Yes. Little shout out to Manzac Miniatures, who has a really good point. He starts with a theme, right? Doing a counts as list or a themed list, right? Where he says, like, I want to do this type of thing. It's not necessarily a story. It could be, but it doesn't have to be, right? He wants to have a list that feels like this type of thing. So, you know, you and I, Tom, had talked about this some in the past with, like, making a Legion's army feel like it's a Tomb King's army, right?
Yep.
And so then, like, and if you can do the list and make it feel like that, if the rules can support it, then that could lead to the modeling opportunities and everything from there, right? And so everything kind of pushes together towards this ultimate point of having that. My point is there's so many different starting points, but I think what's fascinating about the list building phase, as it were, is that there's things we all go through and that can matter more or less to us, right? So I wanted to kind of break this down from all sides, talk about what can make a competitive list, what makes a fun list, you know, all this types of stuff. So let's start out with, like, let's go down this road first. No matter what your starting point, you might want to be competitive with the list you are building, right? In other words, the assumption here is not, it's a question of priorities. Yeah. What is your first order priority and your second order priority? So some people start with the competitiveness as the first order priority. That's the point of view that like Gary gave voice to, right? The spike priority. But I'm saying no, let's assume you're starting on any given priority, right? And then your second order priority is you want to build that list to be as competitive as it can be. Okay. But still within the guardrails of whatever your first order priority is. Don't violate that. So if you've got a story and your story is that these types of units are there and these other types aren't, or whatever, you're not going to violate that. Right. So even if like a certain choice to be more powerful, you don't go against that. Right. Or like me, my first order is I only use models I like. I'm not putting it in. Like you won't see probably
Carrick acolytes in his siege forces.
Yeah, you won't see Carrick acolytes in my siege forces. That's a great example because I don't like Carrick acolytes. I just think they look dumb. Right? I like they could be good, they could be bad. I don't care. I'm just not going to use them. Right?
Yep.
And so like the point being is that we can have the first order, but still be aiming at competitiveness. So, Paul, what do you think about when you think about competitive forces? What goes through your head? Like when you're trying to make any army competitive, any list, what are you looking at? What are the key factors in your list building?
I think in general, I have to really study the army first. And get all of those different interactions in my head, like how everything works together, what to expect out of certain units, which is, why I do all kinds of crazy math, figuring out what units are going to do so that I know what to expect when I put them on the table. Really kind of like there's like, before I get to like the list building phase, there's like a lot of other homework I do first.
Okay. You have a math phase?
Yes, there's a math phase, there's a study the book phase. Just all the different things that you can. Like, this is why I haven't really talked about Skaven too much on my channel yet, because I feel like I just haven't read enough of that book, and it's really complicated. Like, that book is a complicated book. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to put out something on my channel, other than like one or two videos that are really like laying down ideas, because I don't feel like I have them yet, because I haven't seen the army enough. And regardless of what your starting point is, like if you're going in more of a fluffy direction, if you're going in some sort of like artistic direction that you want to take with the models and do like counts as, or you're playing your play style, or you're playing toward strictly competitiveness, right? Like you're picking the most competitive army and building the most competitive list within the most competitive army. I think it's essential to know what all of your stuff does very, very well and how it all interacts.
Sure.
So that when you actually put it on the table, you know what it does. Even if you know that something is suboptimal, but you at least know it's full.
Yep. Yeah, you can often get more out of pieces like that's hugely. It's a hugely important point. Like understanding how to use the pieces in your army is often as important, or more so, than whether or not that piece is like the best possible unit or hyper efficient. Right? Like an average piece used very well will outperform the opposite. Right? And just to close this off, yes, Gary P said he does have standards. If the models are junk or he doesn't like them, he won't collect them. That's fair point. Everybody, that's my point. Like, I think the people who literally just build on the raw competitiveness are actually pretty rarefied. Like, they're out there, right? Like, but when that's the only thing that matters, I think most people, there's a lot that influences in like their first order, second order, third order priorities, right? Especially just because of the time commitment these things represent. All right, Tommy, what about you, buddy? What are you looking for in your list? What are the key elements when you're looking to turn it more competitive?
So, like, after I built my list, so, like, for me, like, I will totally consume a book and then let those ideas kind of bounce around and start generating lists based on like things I've seen, like elements in the list, abilities. And then what'll happen is that I will come to a point where I will start generating like 2,000 point lists. Okay. But then I get to what I call the viability test. And I take whatever list I've generated and I set it, I square it off mentally with like, okay, what does this do against daughters with Marathi? What does this do against daughters without Marathi? What does this do against FEC Gristlecore? How does this fare against a shooting heavy Skaven?
Sure.
Like all the things that I expect to see at top tables, how does this list respond to those things? Do I have tools to deal with that? Do I have screens? Do I have things to zone? Do I have things to punch, to clear? Do I have mobility for late game, like objective snaking? Like, all of those things are questions that my list has to answer. And if at any point I feel like I don't have answers to anything in those top tier lists, I go back to the drawing board.
Sure. Yeah, what's fascinating about Tom's list building, as the person who has to be on the receiving end of them, okay? Because, like, what you need to understand is that all these lists Tom's talking about, they don't stay in his head. I wish they would, but they don't. They get manifested into, like, G-Chat, where I'm forced to look at them and give feedback, right?
Well,
So,
I mean, like, I have, like, documents. Like, I do all my list building in Word, because I want to be able to copy paste like partials of lists. Like if there are elements that I want to take this, what if I just build this element out? And so I'll like generate 10, 15, 20 lists fairly rapidly as I look at all the permutations of the points.
yes, and the key there is think of all the things Tom just mentioned, right? Like that's what's going through his head, all these scenarios, not only how it plays against all these other people in the meta, but does it have mobility? Can it drop late game? Can it steal an objective? Can it hold an objective? Can it be defensive? Can it be offensive? Can it punch where it needs to? How does it perform in the magic phase? How does it perform in the shooting? What if I need to remove a 5-wound hero? What if, sort of all these different things are the tests he puts his lists up against. And what I'll say is I think you've oftentimes played lists that you knew had flaws that couldn't do all that because it's a rare list that can do everything we just said, right?
Right. Like my daughter's list couldn't remove like 5-wound heroes. It's not possible.
Right.
Yep.
Well protected deep bunkered 5-wounders.
Bunkered 5-wound heroes.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, if the witches just plow into something, they can kill their way to the hero eventually, I suppose, right? You just got to dig through.
Right.
But like, that's a real high bar. This is why Tom will go round and round on the last 200 points of a list. And yeah, like you grind a list to like the sharpest knife edge you can, right?
Yeah. Like I think through, like I put lots and lots of thought into the capability of everything in the army, so that when I stand across the table from like top tier opponents, I know exactly what my list can do, and what all of my tools can do, like what all of my tools are against all of their tools. What matchups have to happen and what matchups cannot happen if I want to win.
Sure. And here's my advice. So let me use this to segue into what I'm going to say here, which is if what Tom just described of going down, generating 20 lists, all variations on a theme, like he's not generating 20 incredibly divergent lists often, by the way.
It's like 1 unit or 2 units or like size changes in 2 units or whatever. Yeah.
Sure. If the idea of generating 20 units and then performing mental games against every top meta army and then putting it through the checklist of like, how does it perform in these 30 situations? If that makes you, if you think, okay, I would like to be ultra competitive, and Tom admittedly has had a quite good record of doing well in tournaments. So he knows what he's talking about. Like this work pays dividends. And if that sounds like fun to you, I would recommend you do the same. If what Tom just described makes you want to put your head through the nearest wall, as it does to me nearly every day when I have to look at these lists, well, that's the world I live in. So here's how I think about it, because I do try to make my lists competitive, but also fun for me. And again, containing the models I like. So the way I think about it is this. I look at the models that I like. and I look at what sort of options that opens up within the book. You know, we've talked about how a lot of recent books, you have sort of different build options that will become available, right? I don't mean just like the models you can contain. I mean like the types of force you can have. Yeah. This is the 2 or 3 or 4 things this army can do well. Right. And so I think about my list and like, all right, what is going to all build toward that? I'll pick one of those things and I'll say, okay, this is the thing I do well. This is my primary A thing. And if I have space, I'll fit in a B thing. So I'm going to be really good at moving around the table and grabbing things. And secondly, I'll be pretty good at killing things, something like that. And so all of the choices I make will steer toward that, right? Like I don't go, oh, well, I need to put this. If I'm trying to make, let's just take the example of what I just said. My primary thing I'm going for is mobility, and the secondary thing is offense. Cool. I like let's assume the book can be built that way. I'm not going to go and take like some defensive item on one of my main pieces. Nope. That is wrong direction. Everything, all people row in the same direction. Okay, everyone rows together. So like, it's all just more offense or mobility. Period. That's it. Every choice you make is that. Every spell, every command trait, every artifact, everything. That's what we do, right? So that's how I think about it. And then I just think in terms of like, what are the fun little synergistic combos? I'm a big fan of power pairs. And I know you gentlemen also think in some of these terms, but to me, power pairs are just how I think about lists a lot, right? Like I think, okay, this hero plus this unit, or this unit plus this unit, or these 3 units working together. It just tends to be how I think about things, right? Where I think like, well, most lists need to be in multiple places on the board in most scenarios doing multiple things. So this, like my 2,000 point army is effectively like an 800 point army and 2 600 point armies or something like that, right? And that's kind of how it breaks out. And maybe there's some greater ability for them to all work together. But at the same time, I can just kind of split them into their parts and kind of they go to town, right? Power pairs are just kind of the nature of how my brain works. What do you like? Do you gentlemen think in similar terms, like as far as pulling everything in the same direction or power pairs or stuff like that?
I think a lot in terms of how many different synergies I can come up with one piece, or how I can use a piece that ordinarily, like in a battalion, might feel like a tax. A good example was playing, again, just using Nurgle yet again as an example, because that's basically all I've been playing for a year and a half. Running the Light Sys battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord of Lights often feels like it's just a tax in that battalion, and he doesn't really do anything for you. He's just a 140.5 wound hero that's just kind of there.
Right.
What I realized, though, is if you take a unit of 30 plague bearers in the same army, now that's a great power pair with this piece that is otherwise a tax. So you're turning a tax into something that synergizes with another piece. So it basically, like, his command ability like doubles down on the plague bearers, like -1 to hit in combat, -2 to hit in shooting. So it makes them an outrageously tough unit, and you only need that like once or twice a game.
Right.
And that's also like, you know, probably about how often you're going to have the command points available to do that in that kind of list. So I think it just kind of comes together really nicely for that sort of thing. I like to find things in my list like, okay, I'm running X. What can I do? What else will this work with? When I run into a situation where I'm running a power pair and like the hero, for example, in that power pair, if the unit it's associated with dies, it doesn't really do anything. I really have an aversion to that kind of power pair.
Sure.
I like everything to have multiple purposes if I can.
Sure.
So with the power pair idea, I like to be able to have interchangeable parts. And
Yep.
throughout the list have different things that can work together in different ways.
Yeah, so in other words, like this particular hero could work with Unit A or Unit B equally or something like that, right? Or still has a function if they're completely on their own or whatever. Sure.
Right. Like it's optimal with Unit A, but also works somewhat well with Unit B. So if Unit A goes poof to something, like Gryffindor, you still have a plan B of that hero still being useful.
Sure. No, makes sense. Tom, what about you? You thinking this way?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been thinking, and the reality is that most of my lists have evolved around running power pairs. Like most of my most successful lists all kind of sit in this space. The exception to this has been my Sail Chaos Warrior block, which was like the definition of a Death Star.
Sure.
But like my dwarf list and then also my daughter's list have been sets of like power pairs, of like things that are moving together in concert. That like oftentimes I'll have 2 power pair like elements. I'll have 2 independent elements that are like small extra units, like that can whether it could be like a single hero or like a small unit of like 5 Canary or something like that can go stand on points or zone out areas, and then oftentimes an interceptor piece. Like that's been a very common kind of division of labor in my forces.
Sure.
And it's done me very well, is what I would say.
So let's move on. I want to ask this question. When you're trying to build a more fun list, what separates in your mind? What are the different choices you make when you're trying to build something more fun, more fluffy? We can use whatever word you don't find offensive versus something that's super competitive. Like, what's the actual difference of your process there?
I think what I usually start with is experimenting with something that I would ordinarily think is like suboptimal to see what it actually does on the tabletop. And if it goes up in smoke, it's okay because you're playing casually. It's a more fun game. If it works, it works. And a lot of times, like trying out a lot of those different things at the same time. And if your whole list is a bunch of different little experiments with things that might go into a competitive list later, I think it'll be more fun, but you're still working a lot of like the same sort of ideas together. You're just taking that might feel like it's suboptimal to begin with, or it seems like maybe this is a good thing to do, but maybe it's hard to pull off, and I want to see how often I can actually make this thing work.
Gotcha. Hold on 1 second. I have to respond to a comment. So this person has to think something. This is how we always do the show. Somebody just joined and said like, hey, it's my first time joining the show. And I was like, oh, great. Well, this is going to be a wonderful example of how the quality of the show is since Tom's in his car driving and has a bouncing bubble. So no, I apologize. This is where we are right now, but welcome. We're glad to have you along for the first time. All right. So Tom, what about you? Building a fun list. Maybe you're playing with like your kids or something. What's the difference? How do you think about fun versus competitive? Is there a difference there in how you think about your list building?
I don't understand the question. No. What it will mean is that I do not normally take the same units. Like for me, it's literally pulling my Banshees off the table and instead running with a bunch of like chain gasks or something. Like it is truly not playing with things that I would ever consider competitive as a unit. Things that are mispointed, things that are like truly suboptimal from the bottom to the top. Whether it's suboptimal in the numbers that I'm taking them in, or whether it is suboptimal in the unit itself and that unit's costing. And so for me, like it involves basically like changing the very premise of what I put on the table.
Yeah. Well, so let me touch on 2 things. Yeah, somebody asked what a power pair is. A power pair could be 2 or 3 units or something like that, but it's some number of units, usually 2, sometimes 3, that when put together synergistically punch above their weight. Sometimes it's very obvious, right? It's printed on the card, like this thing needs a hero, and if it has the hero, it goes together well. Okay, like, okay, so that's a pair. Some of them are like extremely obvious. Have this unit, have a hero near it, cool. Sometimes, go ahead.
From the show last week, running 2 Rune Sons on Magmadroth next to each other. That's a perfect example of a power pair.
Right.
480 points, they buff each other with reroll all hits, and they are a wrecking ball. Same ability, so they'll be able to stick together and stay near each other the whole time.
Yeah, sometimes it could just literally be like a combination of units that work well together. So Paul, you did a like free guild sort of vlog, you know, earlier. And one of the things you mentioned was having like handgunners like in a line behind a unit of swordsmen or something like that, right? So when the swordsmen take the charge, the handgunners can still activate their stand and shoot. Right? That's ostensibly going to make both of those units perform better than they should, right? Because the handgunners aren't getting immediately murdered when something gets into them in melee, and the swordsmen are punching way harder than they should because there's this extra free round of shooting that's happening, right? That's a placement thing, right? That you're using to trigger that. So sometimes it's not always immediately obvious, as in like you read the war scroll and it says put it together with this thing. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. That's a power pair, right? Okay. So when I think of like fun versus competitive, I want to present to you 2 potential definitions. And I think both of these could be true. 1, you use units that you know to be less powerful or less efficient than would be standard for a competitive force. Okay? We're all vaguely aware that there are units in your books that are just kind of like not as great, right?
Slaanesh Fiends.
I think, yeah, especially now. But like, sure, I'll pick a much less controversial example. All of the Eshin stuff, okay, in Skaven. You decide you're going to do an all Eshin army. That's all in on like fun, right? You know you're taking a bunch of essential, other than Deceiver, I guess. You know you're taking a bunch of like underpowered stuff. But it's fun, it's themey, it doesn't matter, right? So there's a choice you make where you're sort of willingly taking something you know to be less powerful than the curve. A bunch of giants, a bunch of whatever. Pick your thing. Okay. The other option, I think, is besides just taking things you know to be underpowered, are which is fine, is taking things that, like you said, Paul, the experimentation, right? Things that don't necessarily synergize well together. You haven't refined the list into like some cohesive, completely working thing. I think part of what a fun list is just it's not as tight of a machine, right? It is just kind of slapdash. Like some part of making a fun list is probably just not worrying about it as much. Right? Yeah. Like where you're just like, well, I like all these things. Let's just grab them and see how it goes. They could all be like, some of them could be powerful things, but they're just not like cohesively working together. And so you haven't sharpened the knife yet, right? That could also just be fun because it's kind of slapdash. It might be individually powerful things, but they just don't come together into a list. Right? It's an all-star team, but it's not an all-star team that knows how to play together.
Yeah. And some things I feel like, you know, despite how much I rely on math and studying the books and all of that stuff, some things you just can't get a feel for how it's actually going to play until you put it on the tabletop and run it.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be great, sometimes it'll be bad. Like, I really, like, on paper, it looks like Puscoil Blight Lords are not that good. It looks like they're really overcosted, right? But I've actually tried them out in a few games, and I was surprised at how good they were compared to what I thought of them.
Yeah, sure. As somebody who plays fairly regularly against Puscoil Blight Lords, they're annoying. They're often very, very annoying. That is what I will say. So yeah, I get that. Tom, what do you think about that definition? Is there anything I missed in thinking about that?
No, I think that captures it.
Okay. So the other thing here's kind of what I wanna close out on, because like I said, we got to keep the show tight tonight, and I hope we gave people some things to think about. But what I want to kind of close out on is just like our thoughts of right now in this meta. Okay, what are the things that you should think about in your list, especially if you're trying to be competitive, but just in general? So, Paul, what's your hot take? What are the elements of your list, regardless of army, that you think have a high value in the current meta?
I think very high value having ranged attacks that can be fairly precise, but like long range. So like Skaven Giselles are a good example. They have 30-inch shots and they have a pretty good attack profile. So they're really good at taking out things that are far away. You can snipe out heroes with them. You can whittle down hordes with them. They're a really good option for that sort of thing. Also in that category, I would put like Prodigus is a good example. He has, his spell can just do mortal wounds to
just flash mortal wounds. Long range kind of power projection, right? The ability to hit individualized targets at a great distance.
Yes, I think that is very powerful because a lot of things really rely on some hero or some piece of synergy and interaction, and if you can pinpoint break your opponent's synergy, it often will make something this breakdown.
Yep, sure. If you can disrupt their power pairs, yes.
Yes, exactly. In addition to that, I think mobility is really, really important. And different lists are going to be able to do that in different ways.
Yeah, there's lots of definitions of mobility, right? Sometimes that's just literally high movement. Sometimes it's teleportation, whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of good examples of that. With Nurgle, like the Feculent Gnarlmaw's ability to let you run in charge is just ridiculous. You can take a unit and slingshot it halfway across the board with that. And, I've won games from just having a unit in a place that looks like they're not a threat, but they can run with a command point, moving it to a 6. Okay, now they're moving like 11 inches over to in range of the Feculent Gnarlmaw, and then they charge and hit something far away and take an objective. They made like a almost a 20-inch move that your opponent didn't see coming.
Yep, sure.
Skaven Gnawholes, Skitter Leap, things that just have a high movement characteristic. Things that fly also, I think, are really powerful right now.
Yep. Flying is often underrated, and it's just such a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And I think just in general, if you look at like what's doing well right now, there's a lot of like, I feel like it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors, right? In like the top end of the metagame. And you have to kind of figure out which, like, do you want to be the rock, the paper, or the scissors, and kind of go in that direction?
Sure.
Do you want to have like the good range power projection? Do you want to be really killy? Do you want to be able to like come up the board or be really mobile, or any number of things? Or do you just want to play flesh eater courts and
sure
tournament?
Plow into people? Yeah. All right, Tom, what about you, sir? What are the other elements that you think about? What's critical in the meta right now?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that if I want to run, like if I want to play in the meta, I need to be able to have a solution to these big, like punchy death units. Like I don't even know how else to describe them, but like your Gristlegore generals, or the soon-to-be Keeper of Secrets. like the super punchy double, like the +2 attack keepers.
Yeah, you don't mean death as in the Grand Alliance. You mean death as in like just murder units.
Yes,
right?
Murder
Yeah.
units. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's
plague monks, sure, whatever, witches, buff witches, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to have some solution to these things, and or things like that that don't die easily, to make sure they don't rampage across the board. So a great example of this would be like Marathi. Like, how do you deal with Marathi? Because you need something that's going to be able to take hits, or that you can continue to stop over all your toys.
We kind of lost you there, but yes.
So yeah, you need something to feed Marathi, for example. And otherwise, she's going to stomp into your most valuable pieces, and you're not going to have a solution. And so, I mean, what I would say is that you need to have either really hard rocks, like really hard anvils, or you need to have some other tools to deal with these situations. Whether that may be something as simple as Paul said, of like range attacks, where you can pick off these strategic, like monsters before they ever get into combat.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll work better for some pieces than others. Obviously, Marathi, that doesn't work quite very well with.
Sure. No, I think that the other element that hasn't been said yet is like the one I agree with everything said. Like, mobility is really good. I think you do have to think about that. I think the other element that kind of responds to what you're talking about, but it's also alpha protection and stuff like that, is the idea of chaff. Right? Chaff is back, baby. You need to have some units that can die. That can be small units that can take up space on the board, block up charges, get in the way of units, protect you from a hard alpha. Right? Just push out your lines. Generally protect the core pieces you need protected. And by the way, chaff can be pretty simple. Like, I ran at Holy Wars, my chaff was 2 units of 10 Sisters of Slaughter, and they did me pretty well. And then optionally 2 units of Canary, right, when I needed to drop them in as backup chaff. But I think like that, you just cannot underestimate the value of being able to like take them and string them way out, or double stack the chaff walls, or whatever, right? The other thing I would say is, so sort of, and I'm trying to think generally, right? Like, because any army can take the stuff we're talking about. Almost any army has some ability to project power at range through something, right? Even Khorne, a largely mortal force, can still have like slaughter priests who blood boil the crap out of you. That's power projection, right? Anybody who's ever been on the receiving end of 3 blood boils knows what it means to just melt, right? Most any army can take some kind of chaff and have stuff that gets in the way. Most any army can take some kind of mobility. Now, I would argue that like the armies that are currently lacking these like really central concepts, like they have no access to an anvil or chaff, or no access to any kind of advanced mobility, anything. They can't fly, they can't teleport, they can't move fast. They're just literally only walking around the board. Those are the weakest armies in the meta right now. Right. The other thing that I think is like that I always sort of think about in my lists is what will scare people. Okay. And what I mean is, like, I like to think about, like, in the current meta, there's all, like, in what we just said, people want to have power projection, right? Like, so a lot of lists right now can do a lot of scary things and can really like reach out and touch you. And so I think a bully is chaff for power projection. Okay.
Yes.
And it's important to have something that I think the enemy will find threatening, to go one of 2 ways: either to have nothing that they find threatening, so they have no target priority, or something they definitely find threatening that you don't mind losing, that isn't your core strategy. You understand what I mean? That you can like afford to push out there, scare them with, while your army's actually doing what it's trying to do. I think that's something that's pretty critical to think about. And like, it shouldn't, if the thing that your army relies on is also the thing that is they want to kill the most, that's not great. Right? Like, that would be my argument. So I think like a bully, a scary thing, is really important. A distraction carnifex, although I don't really know what that means. I think that's what that means. Like something they have to answer, right? That isn't actually essential to the list performance.
Yeah. So, for example, in my daughter's list, that was Marathi. Like Marathi was actually not essential. She was truly a distraction carnifex that could like spike people, and they had to deal with her. And she was never part of my main plan. She was always something I threw away.
Right.
For whatever reason, yeah.
Yeah, she's just a throwaway piece. She seems like she shouldn't be, but she is. It's so funny that Marathi ends up as a throwaway piece in most doc lists. Yeah, and like Chaos in the comments said it's something that a diversion that gets your opponent to overcommit to. Yep. Absolutely. That's what that sort of thing is, right? Something you could, by the way, in like Skaven, this could be a thing you pop up behind them in a novel, right? Just a big unit that might actually not be that scary, but like now they suddenly have choices to make. And anytime you're making the more choices you make your opponent make, the more chance that they screw one of them up, right? Yep. So having that kind of unit. All right. Absolutely. Well, I think that's kind of anything else we want to say on lists real quick before we call it a night?
Nope. I just had one more quick thought.
Okay.
Talking about metagame in general, I think if you're thinking about building for metagame, you're not necessarily playing for the top tables metagame.
Sure.
Right? Like, which is kind of like what we've been talking about metagame, for the last like 10 minutes, right?
Sure.
Sometimes your metagame is, what do people at your local store play?
Yeah. It's a good point.
What do people in your play group play? If you're going to a tournament and you have a general feel for what your performance is going to be like, for example, if you think you're going to be sort of hanging out in the middle of the pack, you want to be thinking about what other kinds of lists are going to be hanging out in the middle of the pack so that maybe instead of going 3-2, I can go 4-1.
Right. So in other words, you want to start thinking about like how you perform against, Iron Jaws and Stormcast and,
right.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like other middle pack joke lists. No, it's, whatever.
Yeah. But very seriously, like that's, for, like the last GT I went to, I knew Nurgle was not going to be taking home the gold. So the question was, okay, if I'm going to be playing around the middle tables and I'm kind of like shooting for 3-2, maybe 4-1 if I have a really good couple of days, what do I need to be good against?
Mm-hmm.
And I know in the Northeast, there's a ton of Stormcast that you have to deal with.
Right.
Blight Cyst is a really good idea because you're going to crack through that armor. You have to think about what you're actually going to play against, because you're not going to necessarily be up against Gristlegore every day, or Daughters of Cain, or Skaven, or pick any top tier army. That's not necessarily what the actual metagame you're going to be encountering is. So the metagame that you encounter, I think, is what you really need to plan for.
That's an excellent point. So there's probably other thoughts that you have, and this is kind of one of those things where I want everybody to share their own thoughts on list building in the comments. So if you have more thoughts, other things that you think about when you list build, because I think this is a rich topic we could return to in the future. And so drop them down in the comments. I'd love to hear your own thoughts, how you build, why you make the choices you do. I'm endlessly fascinated by this because I think we express a lot of our personality through the lists we build and how we build them and what we take. And I think it is a very personal thing. It's a singular aspect of this game that gets expressed in so many divergent ways. It fascinates me. And I don't think any of them are like, right. You know what I mean? Like that's not a thing. It's just like there is a way you should do it for yourself that will make it result in fun games for you. So I'd encourage people to put down some of the ways they think about their lists, because maybe that'll help somebody else trigger the same thoughts. But as always, Paul, much appreciated, buddy. Congratulations on your new title holder. I'll have to run somebody up like 3 times or something and just see if I can get you some competition.
All right.
But as always, we very much appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday.